all the examples that you gave around what conflict looks like in the practice, I think those are mostly extreme versions. Like when you walk in and no one's talking to each other, that's extreme. If people are throwing things, that's not okay. Like that is too far. That is too far.
It is not, and it happens more than I wish that it did in veterinary medicine.
But here's the other thing. There are other dysfunctions, I believe, that are based on conflict avoidance, right? Like we know we're not good at managing conflict, so we just avoid conflict. And then you have other wildly different problems in the practice.
Hey, VetFolio Voice friends, so glad you're back and you tuned into this episode. In this one, we dive into conflict management, which can be a bit of a heavy topic, but luckily I was joined by none other than Dr. Andy Roark and Stephanie Goss. If ever there were two people who could step into a conversation around a difficult topic and walk away with an episode full of lots of laughs and an idea for a terrible new reality show, it's these two. And I want to be really specific when I say they can help lighten the load around heavy conversations. And you'll hear it in our conversation here. I'm certainly not talking about sugarcoating or, toxic positivity, so to speak. No, these two are incredibly effective and skilled communicators, so they were able to deliver actionable information in a way that feels practical and immediately applicable. And along those lines, I do feel I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Uncharted Conflict Management Certificate that is now available on the VetFolio platform. If you find this conversation useful and you want to learn more about how to manage conflict in your clinic and honestly, even in your day-to-day life, be sure to check it out. And now, although they need no introduction, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit more about my guests and we will get into our episode. Dr. Andy Roark is a practicing veterinarian, international speaker, author, and media personality, as well as the founder of the Uncharted Veterinary Conference and DrAndyRoark.com. He's been an award-winning columnist for DVM 360, and he reaches millions of people every month through his online presence. Dr. Roark has received multiple accolades, including the NAVC Practice Management Speaker of the Year Award, which he has won 3 times, the Western Veterinary Conference Practice Management Educator of the Year Award, the Outstanding Young Alumni Award from the University of Florida College of Veterinary Medicine, and the Veterinarian of the Year Award from the South Carolina Association of Veterinarians. He considers his greatest achievement, however, to be marrying a badass scientist and raising 2 kind and wonderful daughters. Stephanie Goss brings over 18 years of experience in veterinary practice, from the clinic floor to leadership and management roles in both private and corporate hospitals. She's passionate about staff education, team culture, management, and training. And she also has a special knack for optimizing practice management software, despite hailing from the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, which she fondly calls the land of no internet. Stephanie's dedication and expertise were recognized on a larger scale when she was honored as the 2023 Speaker of the Year for the Uncharted Veterinary Conference, a testament to her passion for elevating the veterinary profession. All right, let's go ahead and jump in.
Looking to protect your canine patients against parasites? Look no further than Simparica Trio, Serolaner Moxidectin and Pyrantel chewable tablets. The first chewable to offer triple protection from heartworm disease, ticks and fleas, and roundworms and hookworms. It's also FDA approved to block infections that may cause Lyme disease by killing deer ticks.
Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures. Serolaner belongs to the isoxazoline class, which has been associated with neurologic adverse reactions. The most common side effects were vomiting and diarrhea.
Visit SimparicatRioDVM.com for full prescribing information.
Well, I am joined by the team that needs no introduction. Dr. Andy Roark, Stephanie Goss, thank you so much for joining me in studio. We're going to talk about conflict management.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for having us, Cassi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. And I understand that you gave a talk yesterday on building a conflict resilient team, which I feel like that wording is very intentional. Like not conflict resistant, conflict resilient.
Oh.
Yes.
That sort of came from Stephanie. And so, there's really 2 ways to look at handling conflict in a practice. And so there's the conflict management of like, what do you actually say, or how do you set this up? And then there's building a culture where conflict is okay and we can have some conflict and it doesn't send us spiraling down for the rest of the day. It's like, how do you build a team that can actually bounce back from disagreeing? I think that was sort of Stephanie's idea in putting that talk together. And it's just something that she's really great at is seeing that culture and leading into the human aspect of, what does it mean? Like, we're all here together and we're all people doing our best and we all have different stressors. Yeah. And so how do we support people so that they can do this? And I just thought it was an interesting take. I thought when she sort of came with the idea for our presentation, and then I was like, that's incredible. And so it was, because
I think for most of us as leaders, we think about, we don't want to deal with other people's conflict. Like we get tired of the team feeling frustrated with each other and having to deal with it. And what for me as a leader was really a turning point in my career was recognizing that I actually want an environment where the team feels like they can disagree with one another and that they can say, oh, I don't think we should do it that way, or, oh, I believe something different, or even just like doctor to technician. I want the ability to save Andy's bacon and say, are you sure you want to send that antibiotic home? Like, maybe we should do this instead. And teams tend to think about it in a very, as conflict as a word just seems big and scary and negative. And so when we were talking about it in doing the work on the conflict management certificate, I said, let's take it one step further and talk about conflict as a good thing and a tool for building a better team.
Well, I want to push you a little bit further here too. So, we say we want to be able to have this conflict. I'm saying you need to be able to have this conflict. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that blew my mind yesterday, so we were lecturing, the room was full. It was one of the most full rooms we had. It was a huge room.
Yeah, it was big.
And I asked the question, I thought this was a softball question, and I was going to get really immediately caught asking this question that was clearly a setup. But I asked the whole audience, I said, raise your hand if you think conflict is bad. And what do you I'd say the majority, a good majority,
yes,
raise their hand.
Hands like straight up. Everybody thinks about it negatively.
Oh, I was like, surely you recognize this as a trap. Like, I just no. The vast majority, like they threw their hands up. And I'm like, well, okay, right there. Like, a light bulb moment for me was, like, we're already getting this wrong from the beginning. Like, if you think it's bad, honestly, I think we probably did great good if people just heard the headspace yesterday of, look, what do we do for a living? We deal with medicine where there are people want different things. You've got people who are focused on the outcome, the patient, or the clients. They have to pay for this. We're trying to get them more. They're trying to reduce costs. Maybe they don't trust us coming in the door. Yeah. We have doctors that want to get home to their newborn child. We have technicians that want to make sure the medical records are well documented and things like that. There's people who want to get off and have their break. There's other people who want to get done and they don't want to lose their help. Like that, none of that's bad.
No.
That's what it means to get through the day. And so it's not about wanting to be able to have conflict. Like, you have got to be able to disagree. Yeah. Like, there's no scenario where the front desk that does not know what's going on in the back doesn't want things from the technicians, and there has to be a way where I can say, guys, I know this is what we've done in the past. I think we should maybe make a change, or this isn't working. If you can't say this isn't working, because to me that is conflict.
Right.
If you can't say this isn't working, what are we doing here?
Yes.
And so anyway, I think the biggest immediate thing is, we have got a conflict resilient team, is we have got to change people's ideas around this is bad and go, this is practice. This is medicine. This is what it means to be on a team.
Yes.
And let's stop thinking of this as a gross or bad thing. And anyway, that blew my mind right off the bat as far as, this is where we are. Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we've probably all worked with someone at some point in time who has maybe intentionally surrounded themselves with yes men and, or yes people who are going to agree with everything, whether it's the right thing or not. And those aren't healthy environments.
Oh,
and,
sure.
And they're not progressive, and things don't happen, things don't improve.
It's like, as I've gotten older, I've just come to really believe that most of life happens on a spectrum. It really does. And then there's the culture where no one disagrees with anyone. That's bad. That's really bad. And then there's the conflict-riddled culture where everybody's just contrary for the
toxic,
state.
toxic, and everybody's fighting all the time.
Exactly right. And they're just, it's my way, and I'm going to disagree just because I want to disagree. And that's completely unproductive and frustrating too. Life always, it happens in the middle. And I really do think that there's that balance that we have to strike and achieve, where I'm not trying to celebrate conflict. And I do think one of the problems when we see conflict in practice, and this is maybe just an Andy thing, I think that we live in a society that really celebrates conflict. We know, like, we live in a society where the media is all about trying to get our attention and keep our attention. And we know that conflict attracts attention. We know it does. And that's why you see it on social media. That's why reality TV is the way that it is. I don't like conflict, and I'm pretty good at diffusing it. You will never see me on a reality TV show. Like, they will boot me off in a heartbeat. Like, get rid of that guy. He's so boring. And it's true. I'm like, wait.
There's a new idea for NABC. Let's have
There we go. Yes, let's have a well-adjusted reality show.
Well-adjusted reality show where I'm like, hey, it feels like you're upset. Tell me how you feel. Like, where is this coming from? Like
this
you
is
will
a
never
learning
hear that
experience.
conversation in reality TV. And so I feel like there's this celebration of conflict all around us, and you can't tell me that I'm going to look at Instagram and I'm going to see people shouting at each other, or people owning each other in reality TV, and over time continually consume that, and it's not going to seep into me, at least normalize that behavior for me. I think that's why we see pet owners, and just anyone in customer service would say, since the pandemic, shouting and
Just
yelling has become so much more normalized. And like, I think that's toxic to sort of who we are as people. But I do think it's become more normalized. I think the flip side of that, and that's what makes conflict management so hard, is really good conflict management skills, they're invisible. Like, the people who are really good at conflict management, you don't know that. Like, you don't see it. They just don't tend to have, like, blow-ups just don't tend to happen because they recognize the signs. They ask the questions early on that gets people to say, well, this is how I perceive that. And you go, oh, well, then we can make these changes. And so the problem, the overall systemic problem in my mind is we see bad behavior, we see bad conflict management, and we see it all the time, and it becomes normalized. And good conflict management is invisible. Imagine that we danced in practice, right? Imagine that people would dance in practice, okay? Now,
I love
Can't
this
wait
practice
to-
already.
I can't wait to see where this is going.
Like this,
On our reality show, we are going to be dancing.
There was zero chance this metaphor is going to break down. Like, zero chance. This is perfect. All right, imagine that we dance, right? Okay, cool. And the only people you could see were bad dancers. And the worse dancer they were, the more visible they were. Like, the more, like, you got to see it. But the people who were really great were completely invisible. Those are the only people you didn't see. Do you think you would become a better dancer over time? There's no way.
I would say, I think that ship sailed for me a long time ago.
Yes. But you know what I mean? Like, if all you're seeing is bad dancing, and like you're like, you don't even know what good dancing looks like because you don't see it.
Yes.
That's conflict management. And no one tells us about conflict management.
Right.
Like, we don't get taught in schools. Here's the sad thing too. Most of us, where do we get our conflict management skills? We got them from our parents. We got them from our parents.
Yeah, as children.
And if your parents had good, healthy conflict management skills, you probably got them. If your parents argued behind closed door and you weren't there, you got nothing.
Right.
And if they had bad conflict management skills because they got bad conflict management skills from their parents,
Yes.
then you got bad conflict management skills. And again, we all have the ability to grow and develop, but I'm just talking about the default starting point for most of is what was demonstrated for us. Yes. And a lot of us we didn't see healthy conflict. It's not something that we came up with. And so this whole idea is new. And if you just if you haven't been shown these tools and they're subtle, how do you ever come to go, oh, this is a good approach early on before things get to a shouting match.
Yep.
Let's try this communication tactic, or let's just step back here. And it's really easy. And it's funny, when people are really great at conflict management in the practice, right? You've got a really great conflict management practice. They don't walk around and go, look at us, we're great at conflict management. They just go on with their lives because they're not. Like, we don't stop and think about, like, the absence of a toxic behavior.
No.
Like, no, this is just, we just go on.
And they're generally the really happy practices because the conflict is encouraged and it doesn't come out as we're going to have an argument in the middle of the treatment room, right? So when we asked that question yesterday, that was kind of the responses. When people think about conflict, do they think about the shouting matches, or they think about the hospitals? You know, I've been in those hospitals where people are throwing surgical instruments, or there's, you know, shouting matches and people are frustrated, or it's silent because there's the tension of the team is not getting along, or there's problems here. And so for me, it was like, yes, that is a type of conflict. And as an educator and as someone who came from outside veterinary medicine, from the education field, recognizing what Andy said is really important, that as humans, our education kind of stops at about age 6 or 7 when it comes to human communication skills. And for most of us, we're not taught that. And so as much as we might not want it to be our job as veterinary leaders, a huge part of our job is to give our teams the tools to be a healthy and happy practice. And so how can we take that script and flip it on its head and look at, to Andy's point, making the conflict invisible, not because it's not happening, but because the team is resilient, that they can recognize it and say, hey, I disagree with you, you disagree with me. We care about our job here, we care about our team, we care about our patients. How can we put those values at the center and work through this to get to a place that is mutually beneficial?
I mean, Montessori school is like, that's like the pinnacle. Like that's the apex that most of us get to is Montessori school.
And for a lot of us, it still stops though in childhood. And so
like
we don't get that
everything
as
I need to learn in life.
Yes.
I learned on Sesame Street,
Yes,
or I learned in
exactly,
kindergarten.
Exactly.
And you know, two things kind of stuck out to me listening to you up to this point. Andy, you started down that road by saying this might just be an Andy thing. No, there's people's entire jobs it is to put conflict in front of our faces.
Yes.
So no, that's not an Andy thing. Like absolutely conflict is celebrated. And something, I guess the way it seems to me when you say good conflict management skills are invisible, I think a piece of that is taking away the fear of conflict. Is people who are good at conflict management, it's not a fear stimulus. It's not, oh gosh, like here we go. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of like trepidation there, but just from being human, but it's okay. It's going to be okay at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, I completely agree. So I'll give you an example of this. Like one of the subtle skills, and we talk about this in the certificate course, just basic stuff like this, is as soon as you start to hear tension, right? You like, there's some subtle signs that, hey, this person's starting to feel frustrated. The simple question of like, well, tell me more. That's all. Like those are the types of tools that get people to say, well, this is, you're going to do this, and you say, why do you think that I would do that? Like what you know me, you know what I'm sort of trying to do. Why do you think that I would do that? And just again, it goes back to just those simple questions. But that's why I say it's invisible. Is as soon as the person starts to get frustrated, I say, well, tell me more. And then they're explaining to me where their frustration is coming from, and then we're just kind of sorting it out. And my hackles never get up, and my shoulders never bunch up around my ears, and it's just done. But you know, I want to jump back real quick to something you said. It was actually really interesting. I think a lot of people, all the examples that you gave around what conflict looks like in the practice, I think those are mostly extreme versions. Like when you walk in and no one's talking to each other, that's extreme. If people are throwing things, that's not okay. Like that is too far. That is too far.
It is not, and it happens more than I wish that it did in veterinary medicine.
But here's the other thing. There are other dysfunctions, I believe, that are based on conflict avoidance, right? Like we know we're not good at managing conflict, so we just avoid conflict. And then you have other wildly different problems in the practice. And so I'm curious, like if you think of them, I will think practices that are stagnant, practices that were like, nothing here ever changes. I have seen so many of those practices that are actually conflict avoidant, meaning nothing changes because we don't want to talk about anything. And if we do, then there's an immediate sort of blow up or shut down. And so we don't evolve because that whole pathway is closed down because we're afraid of conflict, or conflict immediately goes bad. So we all know that this person is going to, the medical director or the manager is going to raise their voice. And so we just don't ask. And so we're not having conflict, but we're suffering from conflict.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning, Cassie. Like I think there are a lot of hospitals where it is still very much the veterinarian is at the top of the food chain, and it trickles down. And so to Andy's point, the team is avoiding the conflict by just, well, nothing's going to change, so I'm just going to put my head down and do the work because I care about the patients. I might even like the team that I'm working with. There's not the yelling and that but the tension is there nonetheless every day for people. And I think it's to Andy's point, it's the avoidance of conflict and not feeling like you have the skills to be able to navigate that. And so for me as a leader, a big shift in my journey was when I, as a team member, learned and was given a tool belt and learned a skill set to be able to navigate communication in general, but conflict, and realized how much different life could be. And so for me, it was about, a lot of my journey has been about how do I teach my teams to communicate with each other so that not only the conflicts can be navigated when it does happen, because it will. We're humans, we're imperfect, and we're messy, and it will get that way in the clinic, especially. You know, we talked about we have this kind of perfect boilerplate for conflict because we take human beings who are messy. We take, veterinary medicine, which is a high stakes, high pressure environment. We have patients' lives at stake every day, and everyone is passionate about what we do. We put all of those things together, and it's like this perfect pressure cooker sometimes for conflict to just happen. And if we don't have the skills to work through it, we get stuck in that place. And over time, it leads to those more extreme examples as a result. So it's, I've been super excited to start to talk about this more in our field, in our industry, because I think we did a really good job for a while of starting to shine the spotlight on those truly toxic behaviors and change the script and the narrative as a community in vet med that, hey, this shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have those extreme examples. And I still think that there's a lot more work that we can do in the middle ground to equip people and give them the tools to talk to each other instead of having to feel like they have to come to me. That was one of the questions I asked out of curiosity yesterday. I said, raise your hand if everybody comes to you as the leader, whether you're the manager, practice owner, whatever your leadership role. Raise your hand if they come to you because they are having conflict with someone else. And the amount of hands that went up was overwhelming. And I was like, this makes me so sad because that's a horrible life. I've lived it. It's a horrible life to live. Who wants to feel like they have to solve everybody else's problems all day long? So
well, it's like you were the person. One of the things I just admire about you is like your interpersonal skills are so good. Like you're so good at building relationships. You know what I mean? And working with people one-on-one. The idea, the team is like, look, we can't have conflict between each other. She's like, let's go talk to her. And then she will use her interpersonal skills with each individual person. And that's how our practice will go forward. Like, that's a brutal weight to put on your shoulders or people like you. You know what I mean? Yes. But we see that all the time. And there's so many people who are managers
my
who
boss,
are like,
my lead, my manager.
Yes.
She
my
has
manager is the one who solves
skills for all of us.
who solves the problems.
Yeah. Well, I think the people who are most excited about the certificate, the conflict management certificate with VetFolio that we made, that I have heard from, are people who fall in the category of exactly what you're talking about. They are the person who other people come to and say, this person said something mean to me and I need you to go talk to him, or this person's being a jerk and not doing, will you go talk to him? And so there's this thing called the Cartman drama triangle. Yeah. And so it's called the Cartman drama triangle, or the hero, villain, victim triangle, right?
I have such a picture in
okay,
my
go.
head.
Yeah, you have a picture. All right, cool. So
Right?
imagine this, right? So whenever you have conflict, right, in practice in the world, you ever have conflict, there's 3 roles that are being played, okay? So there is the villain. The villain is the person who is causing the problem. That's the person we're upset about, right? There's the victim, and the victim is the person that is being negatively impacted by the villain, right? So that's the victim. And then there's the hero, and the hero is the person who comes in and defends the victim and vanquishes the villain, saves the day. And so the people who reach out to me are the heroes. They've got a victim and they've got a villain, and they are continually being called to be the hero. Yes. What we try to do with our certificate is make it so that in practices, the victim can be their own hero. And now you're not getting pulled in. And it's just, it's so common because we all want to be a hero. We like helping people. We like jumping in and saving the day. It's wildly unproductive. If you're the practice manager, if you're the medical director, you're the practice owner, you have a million things to do with your time. Jumping in and being the hero to deal with this one-off interpersonal conflict over and over and over again, it sucks up a ton of your time, a bunch of your emotional energy. And then you know what's going to happen next time there's a problem? They're going to come get the hero again. It's like, God, it would be exhausting to be Batman.
Trained them. Now you've trained them.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like they're going to flip the bat signal on again and again because why do we even have police? Just flip this thing on over and over again. And so, and that's you. And it's cool to be Batman the first night, but then by the end of the week, you're like, this is tough. Yes. People live their careers that way. And so anyway, the feedback we got was from people who were continually being the hero, who said, oh, thank you so much. Like now I can say, great. This is going on. I understand. I have got a resource for you, and let's work through this together. And then you can go back and you can start to deal with this yourself.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going back to thinking of veterinarians. I remember when I was coming through undergrad and they recommended I take a business. I get a business minor. I failed miserably. But they said, they're like, you're going to be trained to practice medicine, not to own a business.
Sure.
It seems kind of like a similar concept here of like, you're trained to practice medicine, not to lead this team and take on this role and handle these types of conflicts. And so initially when we started in this conversation, my head was like, okay, as a veterinarian who's in a leadership role and developing, being better able to help manage conflict throughout the team, which it sounds like is important, but it sounds like that's what puts us in that constant hero role. And so really what's more important is sharing that tool belt and making everybody able to be their own hero and solve their own problems where it doesn't continue to fall to one person.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest problems with sort of training people in vet medicine is everybody's so busy. And it seems like it's harder than ever to even do a lunch and learn these days. We're doing staggered lunches. We do staggered lunches so that everybody gets a break and we don't have to get the practice down and we can serve the pets coming in. And I get it. It's just, it seems like the opportunities to get everybody together and to learn has just sort of gone down. And so doing something like this, like partnering with VetFolio, where we say, hey, here it is. Everybody can have access to it, and then we're going to do it asynchronously. And we'll say, hey guys, by this day, everybody should have watched, part one of this, four-part series. And then we're just going to have a quick huddle at lunchtime, 30 minutes. We're just going to talk about it real quick. I'm going to ask you guys some questions. What do you think about this? How would you handle these things? And just have some discussion. And now they're getting the knowledge. And then you just take a little bit of time in your practice to have a small group. Maybe it's just half the CSRs get together and we just, answer some questions. Yes. We give examples in the certificate of what conflict looks like and sort of say, well, what would you do with this? And how does this look? And it's just been from an efficiency standpoint, it's been a really successful way to sort of support practices.
I love that you use the word efficiency, because I was going to say also check out the Leadership Essentials certificate on how to run efficient meetings, because talking about it in 30 minutes is also a skill.
Yes, it totally is. Yeah.
Thinking of conflict management, I really hadn't, I've certainly experienced conflict in practice, and, reading the article that you put together, Andy, that we've talked about a little bit here, as far as, conflict being so normalized and good conflict management skills being invisible. I really hadn't thought about it from that perspective, because I think it is very easy to look at no conflict as no conflict. And that's not what we're going for. And I think both of you are doing a really good job of illustrating like conflict is how we grow. It's essential, and it's part of having a healthy team. And how important it is to be able to navigate that together.
Yeah. So let me sort of paint a picture of kind of what it looks like, because I think when we started putting this course together, there was a couple of raised eyebrows, I think, from VetFolio of like, what is this exactly? So,
our team has no conflict. What are you talking about?
Well, but no, but it was like this, and so there's these things. So here's what high performing practices look like, right? Okay, cool. First of all, when you come in, everybody. There's a culture of positivity, right? Meaning that you have been given positive feedback again and again about the things that you do well. So if you and I bump heads, it's not the only thing that you're hearing today is you're working, nobody's saying anything, and nobody's saying anything, and I say to you, hey, Dr. Cassi, you really should have put that mast cell dog on Benadryl. What happened? Like, that's the only thing anyone said to you all day, and you're busting your butt. It feels terrible. What about if you come in and all day long it's, hey, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate that. Hey, could you help me with this? One of the things I really like about working with you is blank. And again, I'm compressing it all down to one day, but just imagine that that's the culture, and you hear 2 or 3 positive things or positive pieces of feedback every day. Then imagine that you and I are friends. We talk about our weekends. We know each other. I know your family, you know mine. You know what I mean? Like we know each other as people. And so layer that on top. And then imagine that I say something to you that's like, hey, I want to make sure that you were intentional in your choice not to put this dog on Benadryl. Is that really what you want to do? And that's how I would say it. It would not be, I can't believe you didn't do that. You know, but again, but when you can see how it stacks, right? So when we talk about conflict management, people are like, all right, there we are, and we're in the argument, and she says this, and what do I say? And I'm like, the fact that we've gotten to this point is already like we have failed multiple checks. And that's why I say it's invisible, is because if you set the culture up the right way, and we get into this about building a positive culture, we get into this about showing appreciation, and you're like, why are you talking about showing appreciation in conflict management? I was like, because if you show appreciation along, it's just not that big a deal when you don't agree on something. Like everybody feels safe and seen. Yes. It's just not a big deal. It's just Andy's giving me a hard time about this one thing, and that's it. But that's the beauty of it. That's when it's really done well.
It gives you a lens to filter the experience through, and I think from a human perspective, that's really important, right? If Andy and I are working together, and I, to his point, know him as a human, or Cassie, we're on the floor, and I know you. And you say something and my brain filters it as, oh, she was really snappy in the way she said that to me. I now have a lens to not only filter that and think about, is this a me problem? Am I having a bad day? And did it really come across as snappy? But I also have the ability to say, Cassie's not normally so snippy with me. Yeah. Maybe there's something going on for her. And instead of being like, hey, how come you just talked to me that way? I can say, hey, are you okay? Are you having a bad day? Because I felt like you were really short earlier, and that's not like you. How are things going for you? It gives us that lens to be able to filter it through on a human level. And so to Andy's point, we wind up avoiding a lot of the conflict, not because it isn't needed, but because it's just not there. Yeah. Because we can filter it and we can look at each other and say, hey, I know you as a person, you know me as a person. I now have context to those everyday annoyances that happen a million times a day, especially in a high pressure vet hospital where we're all moving, and nobody stops to take a bathroom break all day. That is the ability to just let it go and let it roll off our shoulders. That's the resilience. That's the resiliency factor. And I think that was what was so fun about diving into the content, whether it's yesterday or in the certificate, is how do we help teach our teams to be able to have more better days, and that for me as leader, that's what it's really about. So it's been really fun to do.
I love that you're framing it in terms of a culture. I mean, both of you are. And this is a daily, bank that we're making deposits into and creating a positive culture, because I mean, I can sniff out a compliment sandwich. Like, I know what you're doing.
Everyone can.
Yes, you're spot
Everyone
on.
can.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's not about, I'm going to say something nice and then I'm going to say the mean thing. Right. It's like, no. I mean, one of my favorite sayings, and we talk about this on our podcast together all the time, and like basically in every lecture I give, this comes out because it's such a core piece of my philosophy of just leading a team and working with people, is I truly believe that people are simple animals, right? And I don't care how many degrees you have, but you're a simple animal. And guys, we're vet professionals. We know how to train simple animals. Most of us are not doing negative reinforcement training. Mm-hmm. We're not smacking dogs, thank God, on the rear, for making mistakes. That's not what we're doing. Most of us, and I'd like to see all of us, but most of us are really heavy into positive reinforcement training. The way that we change behaviors is we celebrate and reward the behaviors that we want to see. And that's how you train people. It's how you train the doctors and the specialists. It's all the same. And so the best way for conflict management is to build a culture of positive reinforcement where we tell people they're doing a great job and we celebrate them and we celebrate the behaviors that we want to see. And then when people have healthy conflict, we celebrate that and say, hey, you and I were coming from different places, and I felt really good about how we worked through this. Mm-hmm. Thanks for talking through it with me. And like you can normalize that and you can build that, but it's so much better than people think it's going to be. I think people, when they say conflict management, they imagine sweaty palms, face to face, and I go, most of what we're going to teach you, we will give you those skills. Like there are ways to handle this. We can talk. We do talk in the certificate about when things escalate, and stuff like that. However, most of the work is actually good, fun, fulfilling work of building relationships, building team bonds, building that positive culture so that everybody feels okay when we do butt heads. It's just not that big a deal. And it's, I don't know. I just think that that's the thing that most people have missed, and I love calling it out. But it's funny. I had people come up to us after the lecture yesterday, and the thing that bit the most to me was I had sort of a group of people, and they came together and they said, "You changed my whole philosophy. Like I'm looking at this entirely differently now." Mm-hmm. And again, if you were at the very beginning, we were talking about, do you think conflict is bad? And then we talk about, that's it. Even that by itself, that's an example. Mm-hmm. I think that so much of this is not, you don't have to get better at winning shouting matches, for goodness sakes.
Yes.
There's just another way to look at it. And if you look at it that way, I promise you're just going to be happier. And anyway, especially if you can get the team to kind of look at it together that way, so we're all looking at the same thing.
And I'm so excited because it's funny, Cassi, your team and in AVC and doing this certificate. When I joined Andy's team 8 years ago, we started talking about the kind of CE that I wanted to see in the world, and having this kind of CE out there was something that was a dream of mine. And I told Andy, I was like, I want to do something for the team that is going to give them communication tools that are going to change their life. And so being able to look at things like Leadership Essentials and the conflict management certificate it was a game changer for me in practice, to Andy's point of just flipping the script and giving me a different way of looking at it. And I'm super excited to be able to, one person, one group, one practice at a time, start to change that narrative. I think it's healthy for all of us in veterinary medicine. I think it's something that's really needed. And so it's been really exciting to be able to have a partner in you all in the VetFolio team who believes in how do we just give them the tools, instead of looking at it from the leadership perspective of, I don't need to just equip the leaders, because if I do, I'm creating the Carmen drama triangle and I'm just creating another hero. How do I teach them to be their own heroes?
Yes, and we love you guys too. We're so happy that we're doing this together. But another thing that I kind of heard listening to both of you is, we're talking about, we're simple animals, and I will raise my hand. I fall into that category.
Right.
But Stephanie, the example that you gave, where you say, Cassie's not usually like snippy with me on the fly, unless I'm hungry. Like I have a reputation.
Hangry's a real thing.
But if I'm picturing that interaction, and then if we were to have that conversation, you said, hey, is everything okay? I'm sorry, I was hungry. I really needed a sandwich, and I shouldn't have snapped at you. Yeah. The dopamine from solving that, that's positive reinforcement in and 100%. Of itself. So it's almost like this self-perpetuating cycle of once you become better at solving conflict, at managing conflict, it just kind of continues to reinforce itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's totally true.
Yeah, and it's that positive culture shift. And so, like I said, the practices that have really strong conflict skills within all members of their teams are usually the high performing practices, where you walk in, and to Andy's point, it's all the invisible dancing. It's the happiness. It's the, hey, we really love being here, and you can feel it, you can see it, and you can experience it. And so being able to grow that from within a single practice, I think is huge, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. So, conflict management certificate, leadership essentials certificate, and our new reality show about bad dancing and well-adjusted conflict management.
Yes. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast, for being such amazing partners with the certificate programs and everything. It's always so much fun to talk to you in general, but especially to get to sit down in person and talk.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This has been great.
Oh my gosh. I hope everybody else had as much fun as we did. There's some really great pictures that came out of this episode of all of us just cracking up in the studio, because it was a really fun conversation. So again, I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as we did. Big thank you to Andy and Stephanie for joining me. What a great talk. It's always so much fun. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It'll help other veterinary professionals like you find this and other great content we put out there. If you'd like to hear more episodes, you can click on the education tab on the VetFolio website, or find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are always eager to hear your thoughts and ideas for future episodes, so please feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. We can connect on Facebook at Dr. Cassi DVM, or you can follow me on Instagram at dr.cassi.dvm. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.